Title: My best friend went missing. Then I got a text from his phone. Help this channel grow. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. The story begins. This is the kind of story that crawls under the skin and refuses to leave, the kind that makes people sleep with the lights on for weeks. What you're about to hear is a true horror story about a missing best friend, a silent town, and a text message that should never have been sent. If unsettling truths and real darkness fascinate you, stay, listen, and subscribe for more stories that follow you long after they end. The disappearance of a person is rarely clean, rarely quick, and never gentle for those left behind. In this case, the unraveling began on a warm autumn evening when he realized his best friend had not been seen or heard from in nearly 24 hours. It wasn't unusual at first, because his friend often wandered off for photography trips, exploring abandoned buildings or empty stretches of woods just to capture eerie images. But this time felt wrong in a way he couldn't explain. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense of something coiled and waiting, like the entire environment recognized a truth the human mind did not yet grasp. He felt tension before he even knew what he was afraid of. His friend lived only a few blocks away, and usually, if he took off somewhere, someone in the neighborhood saw him. The town was small, tightly packed, the kind of place where every movement was noticed. The roads curled through dense trees, and the houses were old and weathered, with chipped paint that made them look as though they were slowly decaying. In a town so small, absence was loud. People grew suspicious when someone missed work or failed to show up at familiar spots, because routine was the only constant in a place where the days felt too quiet and the nights too long. That first day of silence felt like a warning that no one recognized until it was too late. He tried to reassure himself that his friend was fine, maybe just lost in some new obsession or trailing a rumor of a place worth exploring. Yet, the unease persisted, growing stronger as hours passed. The evening light dimmed into something murky, the kind of dusk that seemed unnaturally heavy. He sent messages, then more, hoping for a simple response that never came. Each unanswered message only deepened the dread in his stomach. The air felt colder, even though the temperature hadn't changed. He couldn't shake the sense that the absence was intentional, not on his friend's part, but by something else entirely. By nightfall, worry overcame patience, and he decided to check his friend's house. The walk there took him along the leaf-littered sidewalk, illuminated by streetlights that flickered unpredictably. The lights had always flickered, but tonight they seemed coordinated, as if responding to some unseen presence. He tried not to look at the dense woods lining the main road because the shadows between the trees looked too deep, too layered, as if something stood just out of sight. The silence grew startlingly thick, absorbing the sound of his footsteps. He felt exposed, like eyes watched him from places too dark to identify. His friend's house sat at the end of a narrow drive, partially hidden by overgrown hedges. Usually, the porch light glowed all night. Tonight, the house was completely dark. He hesitated before approaching, staring at the shadow-filled windows. They looked like empty sockets. Something felt terribly off, and he sensed it even before stepping onto the property. When he reached the door, the feeling intensified, pressing against his chest, urging him to turn back. But worry was stronger than fear, at least for now. He knocked. No response. He knocked again, louder. Nothing moved inside, not even the shift of air. The door was unlocked. The moment it swung open, a wave of cold rolled out to greet him. The house wasn't simply dark, it was suffocatingly still, as if every living thing had been drained from it. His eyes adjusted slowly to the dim interior, revealing disarray. Cups left on tables, a jacket thrown over a chair, and a backpack near the door indicated his friend had returned home at some point. But the atmosphere felt wrong, like the house had been abandoned mid-breath, frozen exactly at the moment something went very wrong. Each step deeper into the house amplified the sense of intrusion, almost as though the environment recognized him as an outsider. He walked through the living room, then the kitchen, calling out quietly, though he knew no answer would come. The refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked, but the house felt devoid of life. There were no signs of struggle, no broken items, no marks or disturbances. Everything was chillingly ordinary, yet the tension in the air made the normalcy feel sinister. It was as if whatever happened here didn't require chaos, it was clean, precise, deliberate. That thought frightened him more than the idea of violence. When he reached his friend's bedroom, he noticed the window was slightly open. The curtain moved gently in the draft, though the air outside had been still. On the desk lay his friend's journal. It was flipped open to a page filled with writing, though the last sentence was abruptly cut off. A pen lay on the floor. The page described a location in the woods beyond the old water tower, a place rumored by locals to be cursed. People claimed to hear strange whispers near the creek that ran behind the tower, though no one ever admitted to investigating seriously. His friend, however, would have been drawn to it immediately. There was mention of light seen between the trees, faint movement at the edge of vision, and a growing sense that something watched him whenever he approached the area. The writing ended mid-sentence, as if interrupted. A dread deepened in him. He left the house, feeling the weight of the darkness pressing against his back as he exited. Outside, the night had grown unusually quiet. Not a single insect sound, not a breeze, nothing. He checked his phone again, hoping irrationally for a message. His screen remained empty. He began walking home, planning to notify the authorities at sunrise if his friend remained missing. He didn't want to wander into the woods alone at night. Even bravery had its limits. Halfway home, the streetlights flickered again, but this time not randomly. They blinked out one by one, as if something approached, moving down the street by extinguishing the lights. He froze, heart pounding, as patches of darkness swallowed the sidewalk behind him. The feeling of being watched intensified with suffocating force, as though something emerged from the woods and now stalked the edge of the road. He quickened his pace without looking back. He didn't want to see whatever might be following him. When he reached his house, he locked the door immediately, every nerve electrified with unease. He tried convincing himself that exhaustion made him imagine things. The house felt safer, though not entirely comforting. Shadows stretched too far across the walls, and every creak made him jump. Hours passed in tense silence until, unable to sleep, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at the door. The night had a strange way of stretching time. Then, at exactly 3:16 a.m., his phone buzzed. The vibration broke the silence like a scream. When he picked it up, his breath caught in his throat. The message was from his missing friend's number. It contained only 5 words. 5 words that didn't make sense, 5 words that chilled him to the bone. The message sat on his screen like a living thing, pulsing with an energy that didn't belong in the human world. He stared at the words again and again, as if repetition might change them or reveal a mistake. But the meaning was unmistakable. His best friend had sent a warning. To stay away. To not follow. Yet the message felt wrong. The tone, the phrasing, the timing, none of it matched the way his friend communicated. The sentence seemed drained of personality, as though rewritten by something imitating human thought without understanding it fully. The words looked like they were chosen for effect rather than expression. The unease deepened into something solid and cold in his stomach. He wanted to respond, to ask where his friend was, what had happened, but his hands refused to move. Rationality warred with instinct. Something about the message whispered danger in a way no verbal instruction ever could. The silence in the house intensified, as though reacting to the message's arrival. Even the distant hum of appliances faded, swallowed by a sudden, suffocating stillness. He felt watched again, only this time the sensation didn't come from the outside world. It felt internal, as though the message itself carried an awareness that now lingered in the room with him. He waited for another vibration, another sign, but nothing came. The single message remained the only thread between him and the unknown fate of his friend. Sleep was impossible, so he sat at the table until dawn, staring at the screen in dread-filled silence. With the rising light came a fragile illusion of safety, as though daylight still held power over the unknown forces that haunted the night. Yet the message continued to loom in his thoughts, a reminder that something terrible had occurred. He made the decision to contact the authorities, though he doubted they would find anything. The town had seen disappearances before, though they were always explained away as runaways or accidents. People whispered about the woods, about old stories buried beneath modern explanations, but official investigations rarely ventured far into the forest. He explained everything he could, avoiding mention of the message. He knew how it would sound. The officers conducted a brief search of his friend's home and asked the usual questions before assuring him they would expand the search into the woods later in the day. But their calm professionalism didn't convince him. They didn't understand the weight of the situation, the darkness pressing in from beyond ordinary logic. After they left, he found himself restless, unable to sit still. The journal entry continued to haunt his thoughts. His friend had been investigating something in the woods. He had gone near the old water tower and followed the creek toward a place described only through fragmented notes and eerie sensations. If the authorities focused on the main trails, they would miss the deeper, hidden area that seemed to draw his friend toward it. Despite the warning in the text, he felt compelled to search. Fear intertwined with guilt, urging him to act. If something had happened, he couldn't live with not knowing. The woods were dense and quiet as he approached the old trail behind the tower. Sunlight filtered through the branches in pale streaks, illuminating dust motes that floated lazily in the air. The further he walked, the heavier the atmosphere became. The forest felt unnatural, as though every tree leaned slightly inward, observing him. The smell of decaying leaves thickened, mingling with a dampness that seeped into the skin. Each step heightened the sense that he had crossed an invisible threshold, moving into a place where human presence was unwelcome. He followed the creek, just as the journal had described. The water moved sluggishly, almost resisting its own flow. Rocks along the bank were slick with algae, reflecting faint glimmers of light. After nearly 30 minutes of walking, he noticed shapes carved into the bark of several trees. Circular patterns, intersecting lines, markings that resembled crude symbols. They were deep, deliberate, and repeated in a way that indicated purpose rather than vandalism. His friend would have photographed these immediately. The thought sharpened the ache in his chest. As he ventured deeper, the woods grew colder. Not a natural cold, but something that seemed to emanate from the ground itself. A thin mist curled around his ankles, even though the air above remained clear. The path narrowed until he was pushing through dense underbrush. The silence became oppressive. He couldn't hear birds or insects, only the faint thudding of his pulse. The forest's stillness felt like a held breath, an anticipation of something waiting ahead. Eventually, he reached a clearing. The space was circular, unnaturally so, as if carved out by an unseen force rather than natural growth. At the center stood a stone structure, half collapsed and covered in moss. It resembled a small well or shrine, though its purpose was unclear. The stone was carved with the same symbols found on the trees. These carvings were deeper, darker, as though burned into the surface rather than etched. The air around the structure felt charged, buzzing faintly against his skin, like static before a storm. His chest tightened as he noticed a personal item near the edge of the clearing. A familiar backpack lay partially hidden in the grass. Recognition struck hard. It was his friend's. He moved toward it carefully, as though afraid it might react to his approach. The backpack was torn, the fabric ripped open on one side. Inside, he found a broken camera, its lens cracked. The memory card compartment was empty. The absence chilled him, suggesting that either the footage had been removed intentionally or something had taken it. Near the backpack, the ground showed signs of disturbance. Leaves were crushed, soil was displaced, and faint impressions suggested movement, dragging rather than walking. His breath caught as he followed the marks leading toward the stone structure. The symbols on the stone seemed to shift subtly as he approached, like shadows rearranging themselves. The closer he got, the more intense the sensation of being watched became, growing into an almost physical pressure. Then his phone vibrated again. The sudden motion nearly made him drop it. When he checked the screen, another message from his friend's number had arrived. The words formed slowly, one at a time, as if typed with deliberate slowness. The message read, "It knows you are here." A chill deeper than fear spread through him. He turned instinctively, scanning the tree line. The forest had grown darker despite the daylight. Shadows intertwined between the branches, forming shapes that seemed far too tall, too fluid to be human. The air thickened. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to respond. The forest felt alive in a hostile, ancient way, as though the land itself had been waiting for him. A faint rustling began behind the stone structure, a sound too controlled to be an animal. Something shifted just out of sight, its presence heavy and deliberate. He felt the crushing certainty that whatever took his friend now turned its attention to him. His breath grew shallow. The markings on the stone pulsed faintly, as if responding to the unseen movement. Then came another vibration in his hand. He hesitated before looking at the screen. A new message appeared. "It wants you." The forest darkened further. The air pressed against him like a weight. He backed away slowly, refusing to turn his back fully on the clearing. Every step felt like moving through thick water. The trees around him seemed to lean closer, as if guiding him toward an unseen fate. But panic forced movement. He broke into a run, branches clawing at his arms as he fled through the woods. Behind him, something moved. Not loudly, but with deliberate, measured pursuit. He didn't stop running until he reached the edge of the forest and stumbled onto the road. Only then did the oppressive weight lift slightly. But as he gasped for breath, his phone buzzed one final time. Hands shaking, he checked the message. "You shouldn't have run." And then the signal on his phone died. If this story left your skin crawling or made you glance twice at the shadows near your door, then you're exactly the kind of listener this channel is made for. More true horror stories like this one are waiting, each darker than the last, each whispering a little too close for comfort. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and stay with us. The next nightmare arrives soon, and you won't want to face it alone.